Okay, so yesterday, day before yesterday, I was listening to Stefan. Let me check recording here. There it is. Molyneux answer questions on live chat or whatever it was, live streaming. And one of them came up, are you still an atheist? His reply was, yes, until I get rational proof or empirical evidence. I assume he meant sufficient empirical evidence.
Could you convince your wife to let you take a second wife and have a bunch of more kids? No, I wouldn't want to. All right. Are you still an atheist? Until I get rational proof or empirical evidence, I must follow where the reason and evidence goes.
And the thought occurred to me, I know. I'm not an expert. I'm not a scholar or a scientist, but I have listened to a bunch of them, like in the fields of cosmology, biology, astrophysics, chemistry, and the like. On top of that, I was a biology major for 2 years in college, which gave me enough to know that it's a lot of information to absorb, and also to be somewhat discriminating in what I hear from people who are representing facets of those fields. So anyway, in the old days on YouTube, which was pretty darn cool, they got rid of a lot of nice features on YouTube. You used to be able to produce and upload a video response to a video uploaded, and it would go in the comment section, only it would be up top, so they would really stand out. You'd have a good chance of getting seen, perhaps by the author. Now, probably not. For instance, I'm gonna upload this to BitChute. My videos get nothing on YouTube anymore, and my subscriber count, I had reached, I mean, it's really tiny, but it's a whole lot better in comparison. I had reached 2,700 subscribers on YouTube. I can't bust 20 on BitChute, so it's unlikely that anybody will hear this. I mean, unless just perchance, maybe somebody will pass it along. Who knows? But it's a good opportunity to just talk about it, right? Proof of God. The weird thing about proof of God, and I happen to believe that it is out there, that it's available, and that I've seen it, is that it's not active proof. Like, you don't say, okay, you take chemical A and chemical B, or event 1 and event 2, and now you have proof of God. How it came to me, and I believed in God, just, fair telling here, even before there was anything that I would call proof on it. It never occurred to me to think there was any other possibility to explain this, life on this planet, a perfect planet, zooming through space at 60,000 miles per hour, spinning at 1,000 miles per hour. But later, as it got more controversial, the whole evolution thing, at some point in the last 10 years, I started paying a lot of attention to people who were much more educated and probably smarter than me, I think, or at least the capacity to absorb more information. And I was pretty impressed, actually, over and over. Not just one video or 3 guys on one particular documentary, but numerous.
As a scientist studying physical chemistry, quantum mechanics, I became convinced that everything about the universe could be described by equation.
Did you set out to find God or to find that there was no God?
I set out to prove that my atheist position was correct. I set out to try to find out what really were the rigorous arguments that I assumed were there that would rule out any possibility of God for a thinking person.
You must have found many of them.
I found some. Many of them were ones I had cooked up in my own mind. But the harder I looked at them, the flimsier they were.
To Dr. Richard Lumsden, former professor of biology at Tulane University and Medical School, and the former dean of the graduate school, evolution was science. whereas creation was merely religion.
What I would try to get across is that science is science. Science deals with the real world, with real phenomena. We don't bring into such discussions inferences of supernatural. But for the first time maybe in my life, in explaining various facets of evolution theory, I began to listen to what I was saying. And what I was saying wasn't making very good scientific sense. It dawned on me right then and there that evolution was bankrupt as a scientific theory.
After much study and soul-searching, Dr. Lumsden became a creationist first and then a Christian. Today, Dr. Richard Lumsden, former evolutionary professor, is a committed creationist because of the scientific evidence. He has since openly debated evolutionists. He feels that in light of the great advances of science in the 20th century, evolution is no longer tenable.
The evidence of science, the best in paleontology, the best in biochemistry, the best in genetics, and so on, is all compelling for creation. Creation theory does not rest on some purely metaphysical principles. It rests on the same science that evolution theory would rest on, except that the better explanation is creation, not naturalistic, materialistic, stochastic, or random evolutionary.
So anyway, back to my main point I was starting to make there is that you don't prove, at least for me, I didn't find a way to prove God actively. I found a way to prove God passively. Check that again. Through the back door, actually. So what I do to prove God, or how it worked on me, is that you prove that life without God, or the creation without a God, is impossible. Therefore, you've passively proved God by proving life without God is unprovable. Not unprovable, that's not even the right term. Science, very scientific terms, prove that life could never have formed by itself. And even before life, that matter could not have formed by itself. So you prove through a back entry that you had to have had a God. Now, none of that proves that there's a God around today, but it does prove, according to science, that there has to have been a God at creation of matter, and then also at creation of life. And we don't even have to get into evolution. But anyway, the proof through the impossibility of no God starts with the first law of thermodynamics, and that is that you can't create matter. You cannot destroy it. And so, boom, you've got him right there. You've got proof of God, because you can't have matter without a creator. Science today in 2020 says it's impossible to have matter. You cannot create matter. So what, did the world change? I mean, it's conceivably, yes, let's talk about it. I mean, could the laws of science change, and at one point you could create matter? Well, nobody talks about that aspect of it. Only that today you cannot create matter. So I extrapolate it or run it on back through all of time and say, okay, you never could. The second one is the second law of thermodynamics, actually, the famous entropy one, the winding down of things. They always degrade. There's also the law of biogenesis. Now, this one is not accepted by the, quote, evolution academic community, but it is accepted by a lot of people who are scientists, actual scientists with doctoral degrees in biology and other aspects of it. And they've coined it the law of biogenesis. Their determination is that you cannot create life. Just boom. You cannot do it. It is impossible, scientifically impossible, to create life from non-living matter. So there is your second shot at it. Law of information. There's another one. This is one that's done by mathematicians and some sort of with a philosophical bent. That you have to have, in order to explain who we are and our brain patterns and the way that a sperm seed matches with a egg, and produces a child, all of that growth of information that it.
During the late 1960s and throughout the 70s and early 80s, Dean Kenyon was one of the leading chemical evolutionary theorists in the world.
Many scientists embraced Kenyon's ideas, and over the next 20 years, Biochemical Predestination became a best-selling text on the theory of chemical evolution. Yet 5 years after the book's publication, Kenyon quietly began to doubt the plausibility of his own theory.
It was during that whole period of time that my doubts about certain aspects of the evolutionary account became apparent. When coming into contact with a powerful counter-argument given to me by one of my students, and I could not refute that counter-argument.
Kenyon was challenged to explain how the first proteins could have been assembled without the help of genetic instructions.
The more I conducted my own studies, including a period of time at NASA Ames Research Center, the more it became apparent that there were multiple difficulties with the chemical evolution account. And further experimental work showed that amino acids do not have the ability to order themselves into any biologically meaningful sequences. The more I thought about the alternative that was being presented in the criticism, and the enormous problem that all of us who worked on this field had neglected to address, the problem of the origin of genetic information itself, then I really had to reassess my whole position regarding origin.
There's so much in even one cell that you could never, ever, ever, through the laws of, I'm going to bring up another law now actually, law of statistical probability, you combine that with the law of information, and they say that it would be impossible to create us, life, and especially intelligent life. And they use an example, I can't remember the name of the documentary, I'll flash it over here on the side when I edit, but they show writing in the sand on the beach, and ask the viewer, who would ever come along writing in the sand, I love you Sally, or whatever, and suggest that just happened by chance. And that's where the law of information comes into effect, that a natural mind looks at a painting, or Renoir or whatever, and your mind just instinctively says, okay, that's creation. That was created by an intelligent mind.
Dawkins is so popular because people are so unsophisticated in their thinking. I am just appalled, honestly, when I read the stuff that's out there on the internet, how inept and sophomoric people are. I'm afraid that many young people just have never been exposed to good, rigorous argumentation with regard to these matters, and therefore they're taken in by these Dawkins types because they've never really read sophisticated treatments of these problems. And to a certain extent, I think the church bears a responsibility for this because we've so dumbed down our preaching and our Sunday school classes and our devotional thoughts.
But now we're in this age of, really it's a demonic age, where all of the schools in the West, globally, Canada, Australia, Europe, South America, and North America, United States, have been taken over by, I call them liars. And I don't say they're liars because they just have a different view. I say they're liars because they refuse to allow any challenge to their theory of evolution. So, there you go. I got a whole bunch of them there, right? I mean, these are the ones I've amassed a long time while studying this. Law of Biogenesis, Law of Information, Laws of Statistical Probability, First and Second Laws of Thermodynamics. And each one of these alone says that it's impossible to have done this without a creator, an intelligent being. So again, no necessity of there being a God today. But you can't be an atheist, because an atheist, I think, believes there never was a God. And those are, to me, very rational refutations of atheism. That's all I got. I wanted to get it done, and I'm afraid that I won't if I don't hurry up. I saw this video 2 days ago, and yesterday was blown, and now it's 3 p.m. on Friday, and I'm having to force myself to do this now because I can just go find something else to do. And let's see, what do we call it? Rational proof of God, or empirical evidence. I think I got both. I didn't develop them on my own. I got them from other people. They seem very credible to me. And I'm presenting them over and out.